It's time to make it, just give it a try. 'Cause you can make it like the old fat guy.
Welcome to today's show of You Can Make It. I'm David Farrell, the old fat guy. I'm going to make something that is a real treat with adults and kids, and that's enchiladas. I want to make some pork enchiladas. Now, the way we make enchiladas here in Canada has got nothing to do with Mexico. It's much more sort of a Tex-Mex dish, and so to every Mexican out there, I apologize. This is our Canadian version of enchiladas. Now, enchiladas are quite easy to make, but there's a few steps. You just got to follow them one at a time, and you'll end up with a delicious, cheesy, wonderful enchilada. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is puree some tomatoes. Now, I used to make these with canned stewed tomatoes, but they're just hard to find now. So what I have in here is 398 milliliters or 14-ounce can of diced tomatoes, and I'm just going to give them a quick run through to make them more even, no big chunks. So we'll just give it a bit of a chop. And there we go. It doesn't have to be totally smooth, but you want it mostly smooth. So my tomatoes are ready to use for later. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to saute up some onions and garlic. And what I'm going to do is put about 15 milliliters or 1 tablespoonful of oil into a big frying pan. Now you can do it in a smaller frying pan, but it makes a difference later on. For now I'm just going to use the big one. And I've added 15 milliliters of oil, and I'm going to add 125 milliliters of finely chopped onions and 2 cloves of garlic that I've chopped up, and I'm just going to put them in this hot frying pan. It's been heating for a while. And what you want to do is sweat them. You don't want to brown them. You don't want to cook them right through. You just want them to start to give off some of their liquid. Okay. So you can see the onions are not cooked through or clear yet, but they're just starting to get a little bit soft. That's exactly what you're looking for. It took about 1.5 to 2 minutes. And now we want to add some seasonings to it. When you add seasonings to a hot pan, it makes them bloom and give off more flavor. And what I've got for my seasonings for my enchiladas are 25 milliliters of chili powder, 2 milliliters of ground coriander, 2 milliliters of dried oregano, 1 milliliter of salt, and 1 milliliter of pepper. So that's 2 tablespoons of chili powder, a half a teaspoon of ground coriander, a half teaspoon of oregano, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper added to our 125 milliliters or half cup of onions and 2 cloves of garlic. So just throw that on top of the onions. And now we're just going to stir it until you get a really strong smell of those herbs. It should only take about a minute, if that long. So I'm starting to get a pretty strong flavor or smell of the chili powder and coriander and that. So now what I'm going to do is add my tomatoes to that, because what we're doing right now is making an enchilada sauce. So we're going to add those pureed tomatoes. And then we're going to add 25 milliliters or 2 tablespoons full of lime juice. Excuse me, that was 2 tablespoons of lime juice or 25 milliliters. And you just want to stir this together until it is totally heated through. It'll just take a couple of minutes. You're just trying to get the tomato sauce hot. So you'll notice we've got some good bubbling going on in the sauce. That means it's heated through and it's ready. So we're just going to pour that sauce into a bowl. Now, what's going to happen here is I'm going to have to clean this frying pan out because I'm going to be cooking some meat in it. So I'll be back with you just after I wash the frying pan. So I've took the tomato sauce out of the frying pan and I've reheated up, this time to a medium-high heat. We did the sauce over medium heat, this is medium-high. And we're going to add about 10 milliliters of oil this time. And what I have here is 650 grams or 1.5 pounds of pork. I've just cubed it up to about 1/4 to a 1/2 inch. Now, I've got a nice big pan here so I can put it all in at once. If you're cooking in a 10 or a little 8-inch pan, you want to do it in 3 batches because a lot of water comes out of it and it won't brown up right if you crowd it too much. In this big pan, I should be okay. Smaller pan, break it into 3 parts and brown them one after the other. So for the next 4 to 5 minutes, I'm going to be browning these. We want them mostly cooked through and well seared on the outside. So we'll just let them sit and I'll see you back as they're getting closer to done. So I'd say it's been 5 to 7 minutes, and you'll see we've got some good browning on the pork. You want that gives a nicer appearance to the eye and it tastes better. But the thing is, you want to make sure it's mostly cooked through and is over 145 degrees. So I'm just going to stick my instant read thermometer in a thick piece. And yeah, we're well over 150 and that's about what we're looking for. Perfect. So now I'm going to take the meat out of the fry pan and put it in this bowl. Now, if you were doing this in a regular fry pan, there'd be lots of brown stuff like this burnt up on the bottom and sticking to it. That's good. That's what you want. Don't worry about it. It's called a fond. And a fond is all the juices sticking to the bottom of the pan and makes a wonderful flavor. I'm very fond of fond. So what we're going to do is cook some peppers in the same pan the meat was cooked in. So I've got here 175 milliliters or 3/4 cup of diced sweet pepper. You can use red, green, yellow, whatever you have. And then I have 1 jalapeno that I also diced up. And we're just going to throw them in the pan for a few seconds to sweat it. Stir it around and get all that good stuff off the bottom mixed up with it. And you just want to do this very quickly. You can even turn the heat down a bit. Again, you're not looking to cook them. You're just looking to sweat them a bit to get them just a little bit soft. It just gives a bit more flavor if they just get that little bit of heat on them. Okay, you can see they're just starting to get a little bit soft there. That's what you're looking for. And we're going to take that and put it with the meat. And then the last thing we're going to do is something called deglazing. You want the dark stuff on the bottom to get into the flavor of the food. So I'm going to add about a half a cup of water to it. And just make sure I scrape up all the stuff on the bottom into the water. And we're going to add that to our tomato sauce, the enchilada sauce, because it's just got so much flavor in it, you can't let it go to waste. So we'll just bring this over and pour it in. And mix that together. And if you give me a minute, what I'm going to do is clean up my workstation and we'll start putting the enchiladas together. I've cleaned up my workstation and it's time to start putting the enchiladas together. And to do that, we start by taking the meat. We've let it cool a little bit. It doesn't have to be cold, but it's got to be a little bit cooler. And we're going to add some cheese to it. Now you can use Monterey Jack, you can use pepper jack, you can use cheddar, whatever your favorite hard cheese is. I'm just going to be using cheddar today, and I'm going to add 175 milliliters or 3/4 of a cup of shredded cheddar cheese to our meat and peppers. Just sprinkle it over the top and stir it in. Try not to make a mess. That's the reason my wife loves me, is she gets to clean up after me. Okay, so now that we got the cheese turned into the meat, just set that aside. There we go. And we're going to put a 8-inch tortilla on the counter. Now, much better if you can get corn tortillas, but they're very hard to find here where I live. So I've had to go with flour tortillas. They work fine, but I think they're better with corn, but we'll use this. So we're going to start off by getting another serving spoon out. And we're going to put some of the sauce on the bottom of the pan. You just want a thin layer because that helps stop the enchiladas from sticking to the pan. So just a very thin skim of the sauce. Oh, that smells good. There we go. Now, we start putting the tortilla together by putting 1 serving spoon of sauce down the center of the tortilla. 1.5, I guess. And then we're going to put 1/6 of the meat, pepper, and cheese mixture over that. And when you've got it all laid out, just roll it over and put it in the casserole pan. There we go. And we're going to do that with all 6 tortillas. I'm just putting the last one together, and I got a little bit of extra pork. What I'm going to do is just save that for tomorrow and put it with some eggs. They'll be absolutely delicious. There we go. So we'll roll this last one up and put it in the pan. And there we have 6 enchiladas in a casserole pan. Now, you have some sauce left over. What you want to do is just spoon that sauce over the enchiladas. You want a good coating of enchilada sauce over them. You should get it down the edges. And now, I'm going to cover this with foil, and then I'm going to put it in a 375-degree Fahrenheit oven for 30 minutes under the foil. And then I'm going to take it out and add more cheese. Man, I like cheese. So just cover that with foil, and we'll put her into the oven. Our enchiladas were in the oven under foil for 30 minutes, and we're just going to take the foil off. And you look how steamy, oh man, they just look great. Now we're going to put 250 milliliters or 1 cup of shredded cheese over the top of that. I love cheesy enchiladas, boy, just get gooey and so good. Get it right into the corners. Don't want the kids complaining they didn't get as much cheese as somebody else. Once I've got the cheese over the top of this, I'm just going to put it in the oven for another 10 minutes to get it really nice and gooey. And then we're going to let it rest for 10 minutes because it's easier to cut out of the pan if you let it rest for 10 minutes. So let's put this in the oven. So I put the enchiladas back in the oven for 10 minutes to let the cheese melt on it. I took them out and put them on the counter for 10 minutes to just cool down and set up a bit. So I guess it's time for my favorite part of all these programs, when we get to taste it. So we're just going to take one of the enchiladas out. Now the first one's always a little bit of a pain to get out, but we'll do the best we can. Not too bad. So there is an enchilada. Now let's just try digging into that. That is ooey gooey, cheesy, spicy pleasure. There is a great texture. The tortilla gets nice and soft. The pork gets nice and juicy cooking in the sauces. The gooey cheese, of course, is just wonderful. It's got just a little bit of spice in the back of your mouth, not enough to really burn you out. This is a great enchilada, and of course, you can make it.
I have a good woman, I ain't good looking, but I do some cooking, I'm the old fat guy. So use that oven if you want some lovin', be like the old fat guy. Be like the old fat guy.